That, but with that, I'm going to get out of the way here and hand this back over to Jen and her team from After the Fire.
I'm just going to take yours.
Turn it back on.
Share the screen now.
Yeah, this is first of all, thank you so much for having us, and we really appreciate everyone who's coming in from Zoom land. We're actually going to go ahead and share screen. We're going to do a really brief overview of our organization and why we're here, and we can go ahead and advance to the next slide. Raina.
You need to be listening.
Dance woman.
Please.
It doesn't work. I'm sorry. Okay, this is a good example of relentless perfect progress because we are now progressing into the next slide. Okay. So here's the agenda. Just to recap again, I'm Jennifer Gray Thompson. I'm the CEO of a nonprofit organization called After the Fire. We help communities navigate wildfires. I'm going to give you an overview of our delegation. I just want to point out that to my right over here is Brad Sherwood. He is from Larkfield Resiliency, and he is a fire survivor, lost his home. We're all fire survivors, but some lost our homes, some did not. And then Krepke, founder of Coffey Strong. Both Jeff and Brad are donating their time. They took vacation to be here. They automatically said yes to this because they really believe in this work, and I am super appreciative that they came. To my left over here is Pamela Van Halsema. She is a fire survivor and a member of Coffey Strong's board and past president. I recruited Pam about a year ago to come and work for After the Fire as our community to community and digital assets program director. And we have Kyle over there working the Zoom and letting people in. We're going to quickly go through some of the overview of the organization and then some fire story, and then turn it over for Q&A. So we can go ahead and advance the agenda, please. So just a quick overview. Our fires happened October 8th, 2017, and they burned until November 1st, 2017. We were really the first major mega fire out the gate. We kind of had a little clue of what was happening from the Valley Fire in 2015. But in 2017, the unimaginable happened in our community, and it was very traumatizing, and it was really difficult, and it destroyed a lot of things, but it also revealed a ton of humanity and compassion and what is possible when a community works together. Our fires burned for 23 days. We lost 8,900 structures across 4 counties, and 43 people lost their lives. The cost, $14.5 billion. And they told us initially that our rebuild and recovery time would be 7 to 10 years. By they, I mean FEMA. What we found is that really depends on how the community is able to respond, a number of factors, and some of the things we're going to share with you today we think will advance your ability to rebuild faster. So you can go ahead and advance. Once again, this is just to give you an overview of what construction looked like, what was residential, commercial, outbuildings. We are making this slide deck available to you, so we can go ahead and advance again. These are just some of the numbers. Go ahead. You can click all the way through until you see all the values. Our mission is that we support communities as they recover from fire, rebuild their lives, and reimagine, because that's really important. We can't give you back the day before, but we can help you navigate the days that come. A more resilient future through prevention, innovation, and facilitation of community-designed recovery. We always listen. We always serve the community in front of us, which is why we brought suburban fire survivors. We brought our A-team to you today, and we lean into learning, adapting, and innovating, and we act with integrity. We are not here to lead your recovery. We believe you can do it, but we are here to provide that support and those people that you can call, and so that you don't have to reinvent all aspects of it. Go ahead. Just so that you know, we are experienced wildfire leaders. Pretty much none of us chose to be wildfire leaders. So we all come from different backgrounds. And we're working together across the sectors. Go ahead and click again. To expand access to wildfire resiliency and recovery. We are in an era of mega fires, which is why we have morphed from our local nonprofit to one that is very active right now in California and Oregon. Our first foray into Colorado, we follow the mega fire. And that's where we show up. So we see a very, very difficult decade ahead of us. We are free to every community. We do ask, though, at some point that we may ask some of you to come along with us to another community with a suburban fire and talk to them about what you've learned and what you've been through. Go ahead. One of the things we do, which I really think I hope you lean into, is you have to advocate for what you need, especially at the federal level. We knew that from day one. We were advised to do that. You can see that we've been very successful at the highest level of lawmakers. We meet with FEMA, SBA, USDA, FCC, variety of people. We are nonpartisan. We are there for wildfire survivors. We are not there for politics, but we are making sure that our voice is heard and we are getting it done. You can go ahead and once again, we do 3 levels of advocacy: local, state, and federal, nonpartisan, strategic, multi-sectored. One of our secrets, and we have a lot of people with access on our board. You can see that's Michael Mandavi, who's on our board. That's Rebuild Paradise is to his right. A Napa County supervisor, Mendocino County supervisor, Paradise City councilman, and 2 staffers, and that's on the Senate tram. So again, very important that you think about what your community is going to need and that you ask for. I'm happy to help you do that. Go ahead. We have a program called Before the Fire. You can just skip right through that. We have about $10 million that we are the lead agency for wildland fuel mitigation. You can read all you want, but we also have to have a responsible management with always, and we're looking for
I got you.
So now I'd like to turn it over to Pamela Van Halsema.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much. Whoops. Thank you so much for being here tonight, either virtually or right here in person. And I want to start by saying that I'm so sorry for what happened to your community. And it's overwhelming. It overwhelms me when I think about what happened to you, because I know it personally. It happened to me too. In fact, my home, we moved into our home in Coffey Park in Santa Rosa, which is a middle-class tract neighborhood, in 2001, and I raised my 3 children there. And in one night, suddenly everything was gone. I escaped at 2 a.m. not thinking. I thought I was coming back. I actually grabbed a magazine. I thought I was going to an evacuation shelter, because I guess I couldn't even imagine that my house would be gone. But there it was. And the first thing right off the bat was, I have so many questions, so many questions. How do we move forward? How do I even understand what the next steps are? And so by starting to ask questions and reach out, that's how I problem solve most of the time. I'm like, come on in, let's all come in. What can we think about? How can we do this together? This is the first picture there, shows right after our fire, there was a local artist, and probably there's people like that here in your Boulder community that reached out and said, I want to come and take a family photo at your parcel that burned. And I'm going to take it, and then I'm going to come back in a year. That first one was black and white, large format, antique camera. And then she took a color picture of us a year later. And you can see, if you can see in that picture of my family with my 3 children and my husband, the first one obviously was before our debris removal, all the destruction around us. I couldn't stomach sifting my lot. It was like looking backward was really hard for me. Looking forward and problem solving and working together was where I found my hope and where I was able to put my energy. And we were much more hopeful at a year later. Behind us is our foundation that had been poured. And so we had made great strides. We weren't back in our house a year later, but we were on the road to recovery. And we were, we had gotten, shortly after the fire, we got a check from the Red Cross. And we were staying in my friend's extra bedroom, all of us sheltered there, trying to figure out what to do. And I said to my husband, I think I'm crazy, but we need people to come back to the neighborhood. We need people to go back, have a reason to go back. They're all over the place now. And we need to think of ourselves as a community that's tied together. And we weren't really, not really. In fact, I was involved in some Santa Rosa community organizing, and people said, Coffey Park is not organized. Can you help with that? I had people actually ask me that. I was like, I don't even know where to start. Well, we all suddenly had the same problem. And so I said, I'm going to take that $500 check and start making some t-shirts. And this is a t-shirt that we made. I asked some local graphic artists to create some logos. We picked a logo, and on the back, we put the New York Times map of where the destruction happened. And I made them, I sold them at cost to fire survivors, and I sold them at a huge markup to other people. We raised a lot of money selling these shirts, but they also became our team shirts. People would post pictures of them wearing their shirts in front of their lot, on vacation. We're all on the same team. And we still wear those shirts. Now we have mugs, we have sweatshirts and things. But you know, you'd walk up to somebody and you'd point out, oh, that was my house right there. That was my house. And that kind of sense of group identity was really important for us to work together. And it didn't exist before. We also put signs with that same map. Actually, that came kind of concurrent with the shirts. And then 2 years after the fire, my insurance money for my rental was going to run up. I put a lot of pressure on my builder. I was like, we got to get in there. We got to get in there. I can't afford to pay that extra rent. And we got temporary occupancy because it wasn't 100% done. I didn't have a garage door for a long time. People would always come up, so do you got your garage door yet? You know, it just had plywood over it, but we were in on the 2nd anniversary of the fire. I love my new home. I'm so grateful for it. And yeah, you think about what home means to you, and home is not only that house, but it's the people that I've met and the things that we've learned along the way. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. I want to quickly tell you my role with After the Fire is working community to community. And that means taking one fire affected community and introducing them to another, just like we're doing right here. Sometimes that's in person, but more often we're doing that in a virtual setting, like a monthly call. We have a monthly theme. And so we did one on communication with your rebuild community. That was our last one. We've done one on how to deal with rain in the destroyed area and erosion. You know what? We don't plan those in advance. I listen to the fire affected communities in Oregon and California and I hear like, what do people need to know now? And then I call some experts or people who have already been through that and just ask them to hop on and we'll have a discussion together. So you're going to be part of that. I'm inviting you now to keep track what we're doing once a month. It's not at a set time always, so it's the time we do those, but those community calls are really cool and a lot of good information. And then we record them and we put them on our YouTube. We have a YouTube channel for those. We also have a weekly wildfire news digest that if you want to know about what's going on in news for recovery, innovation, advocacy policy, we have that on our blog every week. What else do we have up there? Virtual meetings, local leaders that we do. Yeah, that's true. What makes us different than some organizations is we really try to work at the community level or even higher. So systems level. So you may need some help individually with your disaster case management or your individual thing, and that's not really us. We may you have those questions, we may be able to refer you to somewhere, but what we really want to do is help support those emerging leaders in your community, be able to set that path forward and know where to find the answers and build capacity. Maybe it's in all different aspects of recovery. And that's what our program's about. If you go to the next slide, real briefly, we try to make all this available online when you're ready to access it. Because right now you have a lot on your plate and you're getting a lot of information and you might not be able to digest it.
There we go.
And so we have digital resources, including a podcast, which just came up when COVID hit. And we're like, we can't go places, but we can share stories and interview people involved in recovery. So How to Disaster is our podcast. which you can also see a video version on YouTube. And we have transcripts. If you want to be able to just read the stuff, it's on our web, transcripts are on the website. And then lastly, we're building a platform on a website called Social Pinpoint, which uses maps and merges mapping with community engagement to really allow the community to weigh in on decisions and how to reimagine the future. What do you think of this idea? Should we rebuild this in this way or that way? I really would like to follow up on our visit with you with some folks who are leading in Marshall Together and Superior Rising and other organizations. And I want to offer you the chance to see how that works and see if you would like to use that in your community for ways to engage with the rebuild.
It's also good, by the way, if you want to look at what see what they're doing in other fires. It allows you to go into other fires and look and see that effort there and connect you directly so that you don't have to depend upon us to be a conduit, that you have agency of your own. So we can go ahead and miss it. All right, so now we have Brad Sherwood.
Thank you. I'm gonna hop down here. I just don't want to have the echo. And I can see I'm going blind. Okay, well, good evening. My name is Brad Sherwood, Tubbs wildfire survivor. Where to start? I really want to offer, time for Q&A at the end, right? For rebuild questions, rather than get into, my personal story. Lost the house October 9th. We were back in our house a year and a half later. That is fast. Why? Because we did a group rebuild. We organized as a neighborhood. We picked one developer, and together we worked with that developer to offer a suite of floor plans. We then worked as groups. There were like 6 floor plans. You chose which floor plan you maybe liked a little bit. You organized with those neighbors on that floor plan. You met together. Actually, floor plan A is what we liked. So we met for 2 weeks at my rental house. My wife actually led the group. And our builder told us, hey, if you get no less than 5 people to agree to floor plan A, we can offer you at this price, which was like $200 and I think it was like $94 a square foot. We can get that built for you at $294 square foot. This was at the same time I was getting private builder contracts and bids up to $400. So you ask, what's the difference? Why $294 to $400? And that's because when you do a group rebuild, your builder is already, or should be already, lining up their subcontractors, their supply lines, and securing those supplies and those subcontractors for your group rebuild. It made a huge difference. We ended up building roughly 200 homes in that group rebuild process. We were an unincorporated county. All of our homes were on quarter-acre lots or bigger. We were all built in 1979. We were custom ranch homes. There wasn't one house that looked the same. You try to get your neighborhood to do a group rebuild when everyone was different, and they looked at me like, Sherwood, have you had too much to drink tonight? Because there was a lot of drinking, which is okay, but not too much. Mental health, okay? Our builder worked with us and said, you know what, I hear you. I did the Google Earth images and I see what your neighborhood used to look like. So what they were able to do is take those 6 floor plans and they worked with us to customize them slightly as long as we were in the same footprint envelope for construction purposes. But you were able to do different facades. You're able to do different textures. You're able to do different colors. We were not in an HOA. And when it was brought up to start an HOA, you would have thought a civil war had started. So we stayed away from that. But what we did focus on was we were all underinsured. We were dedicated to coming back in our community, and we wanted to get back fast. Another key advantage of this group rebuild, and I am so going off script right now, by the way, but I just feel the need to share this. Our builder had within their house insurance experts. They were a one-stop shop consultant for us. Your builder, you should ask your builder, do you have an insurance expert we can work with you on? Because what we ended up doing through their insurance expert was set up a fund control program where my builder never got one penny other than my $1,000 deposit. That's it. Brad Sherwood only wrote Builder X. I'm not here to sell them. I'm not going to tell you who they are. $1,000 just to participate in the group rebuild, okay? When I signed the contract, which was a kind of rare contract because it was a no change order contract, meaning they locked in at that 294 square foot. Any overages were on them. That is unheard of. That is another huge benefit. Why not ask your builder though? What the hell, right? From there, the fund control, I wrote all my checks to the fund control. The fund control then cut the checks to the builder after the builder went through several inspections. I think there were like a 3-phase inspection process, right? So they drew the money, not from me, but from the fund control. Guess what? I didn't lose one penny. I wasn't defrauded. I have my neighbor to the right of me gave a $150,000 check to their builder. The builder walked out on him. Don't give money to a builder. I'm sorry, get a fund control. Take care of yourself and your money. Next slide. I have no idea where I'm at.
You're gonna do public sector thing.
Okay. This is, so what does it take to be a leader? Someone's like, how did you get involved? And I said, I really don't know. I just kind of, threw up a website and a Larkfield Resilience Fund. The next thing you know, these great people up to the right, all neighbors, all fire survivors, my neighbors, they're like, dude, this is great. You got a website. What can I do to help? I'm like, well, I need someone to maintain it. By the way, I'm paying for the URL and all the website hosting, which is costing me money. I don't have any money to do this. The big guy, we call him big guy. He's like, I'll put up $2,000 and let's start a 501c3. Let's generate and get money to our neighborhood now, because we were not an HOA. Problem was, where do we start collecting money in between the time it takes to get a 501c3 set up? Bam, that's where Jennifer comes in. After the fire, came in and said, we will hold your funding for you. We will help you guys until you get your legs up and running as a 501c3. Without that, we couldn't have done what we did. What did we do? Over the course of the next year, raised close to $1 million in funding contributions from businesses, nonprofits to help our community rebuild. That's us celebrating a beautiful project with our Board of Supervisors, our County Board of Supervisors on the left. Sewer, we were all on septic tanks and we wanted to build bigger. We wanted to build more bedrooms. We wanted to redesign the homes. And yeah, the floor plans our builder chose for us did not all fit on our lots because of the sewers, septic systems that we had. So we were on septic, I think I said sewer. We were on septic and the County Board of Supervisors came in and they provided an awesome financial program for us to connect to county sewer. That allowed us to build these plans that we were planning on doing. And it was great. So we were so super excited about sewer. You would not believe the emotions. Sewer is sexy. And then this is us at the bottom. Our neighborhood's right in the smack middle of two major intersections. That kind of, Napa. But when people are done with Napa wine and they want to get real wine from Sonoma, they travel over a road that goes right through our neighborhood, right? So it's a pretty important road. We went to Jennifer and said, hey, we need help not only with beautifying our area once our houses are built, but we have this huge, I don't know how many miles, one whole mile of exposed, what should be a fence for neighbors. And our neighbors can't afford to build fencing right now. We can't even think about that. Bam, Jennifer came through with all of her contacts. We didn't have to spend one penny and she got community sponsorships to build a mile of fencing around our neighborhood. It was incredible. You may think like, wow, a fence. It's more than that. This was the first infrastructure project built in our neighborhood. And when our neighbors saw this, they were like, whoa, okay, wait a minute. People do care about our neighborhood. It was a structure. It was something rising. It was beautiful. So that fence literally brought us together. So that's us at the groundbreaking with several community members. We did this a lot. We get together in the neighborhood a lot. All right, next slide. Okay, but before I let it off to Jeff, real quick. As I said, I just want to pinpoint on the upper left, working with your local government officials is so important. But what's even more important is, and it's hard in this, Zoom, pandemic, but get them out to your neighborhoods. Meet out in your neighborhoods. Our neighbors, we met in the middle of the street every week. Brought people out, let them see, keep them committed. They love you, they want to help you, let them help you, and you're gonna thrive. Before I hand it off to Jeff, I just want to say how amazed I am by this community. I came out here on, she said on vacation, right? I left my wife on Valentine's Day to get on the plane with Jennifer. Believe me, I had to explain that one for a couple of weeks. Thank you for having us, and thank you for being open ears. And I really look forward to working with you all in the future.
I can use this one. Hey everybody, my name is Jeff Okrepke, 2017 Tubbs Fire survivor from Santa Rosa, a neighborhood called Coffey Park. We're in the incorporated city of Santa Rosa, so we're a little bit different from Brad. My fire story, I'm slightly different than most. I was a renter in Coffey Park, renting from family. Primarily because we were about, I don't know, 50% below market rate rent. And so why would we ever leave that? The night of the fire, I don't know if you guys know much about ours, if at all, but it happened in the middle of the night. And the first thing that happened was Atlas Peak caught on fire over in Napa County, which is like not only in Napa County, but on the other side of it's like the furthest part of Napa Valley from us. And Atlas Peak is known for really, really good wine. So my first response to the fires of October 2017 was, well, that wine's done. And I didn't think of anything of it, right? Because it was so far away. And then I started getting ready for bed, and I started like going through social media, and people were like, oh, I heard there's a fire here. And social media being what it is, especially in 2017, you can't trust anything. It's all rumors. So I was just like, I'm not going to pay attention to it. And then, my sister called me and said, woke me up. She works nights as a labor and delivery nurse in the next county below us, south of us. And she was like, hey, there's a fire in Sonoma County. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, it's up Mark West Springs Road in this specific area. And I was like, that's like 15 miles away. Like, okay, but like, thank you for calling me. I appreciate that. But that's 15 miles away. Go back to sleep. 30 minutes later, 40 minutes later, she calls again, wakes me up and says, hey, mom and dad are getting evacuated. My mom and dad live in a city called Windsor, which is the next one north of us. And the wind was blowing towards them at that time. And all of a sudden, when Mark West Springs Road, the road that Brad was describing, that takes everybody over from Napa. So what Brad was trying to say is Napa is for auto parts, Sonoma is for wine.
This is being recorded. Napa's in our charter.
We love Napa.
We love you, Napa. Shout out Napa.
Napa's great, our wine's better. Anyways, so, but what Mark West Spring Road runs along a canyon. And as soon as that fire hit the canyon, the wind was blowing and turned it basically into a blowtorch. And there's some videos that you guys, if you ever gave any care to find, which you probably don't, it's gnarly because it was blowing straight down right towards his neighborhood and then right towards ours beyond that. And so my parents said they were getting evacuated. I said, all right, come over to our house. We'll clean up the spare bedroom and bring the RV and park it in front of our house. So woke my wife up, started getting everything together. The lights started to flicker, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna grab some water out of the garage and the flashlights just in case the power goes out. And it'll be fine. I look out my window, my neighbors are in the middle of the street. I walk out there to talk to them. And it was crazy. So what I say, and I don't know if you guys can relate to this or not, if you've ever been on a beach when it's really, really windy and you got to kind of lean to the side and put your hand up so the sand doesn't, that's what it was like with ash coming through. And we were just saying, this is crazy. And where we are, some genius in the 1970s decided it was a great idea to use redwoods as decorative trees on properties. Well, 30, 40 years later, those are massive trees. So the hills, we couldn't even see. We couldn't even see the glow of the fire. It was just trees and then ash and wind swirling. And so I'm standing there in the middle of the street and can't see anything, just talking to my neighbor. I'm like, man, this is crazy, isn't it? Oh yeah, this is super crazy. And my neighbor comes running around the corner and she said, it jumped 101, Hopper's on fire, get out, get out, get out. And Hopper's this a street right near us. And 101 is a 6-lane highway that then goes into a industrial area, commercial area, and then gets into our neighborhood. And I just looked at my neighbor in the eyes, didn't say a word, turned around, ran in the house. Packed my wife up. We woke up our 1-year-old son. That's the very last thing, put him in his car seat. I sent her out with the dogs to her brother's house, and I went in to pack up some more stuff. And when I decided it was time to leave, was an ember the size of a golf ball as I was carrying stuff out, hit in front of my driveway and rolled down the street. And I was like, well, that's probably a lot closer than I think it is. And got in my car, and to Pam's thing about like, oh, I took it back. My thing is I go to get into my car and I look up and I see my garage light on, and I actually took the time to think, should I go back in and turn my garage light off so I don't, burn out the bulb? Like, that's how unreal this was to all of us, right? That this was even happening. And I had fire brain. I was supposed to go out the back way to my house, and I went and took a left, which is the front way, which I would take to go to work or anywhere else. And that's where the fire was coming from, because I was on automatic pilot. I was like, I don't know, okay. And turned around, got out, and we lost everything. And my little bit of uniqueness to being a renter is also that we found out 5 days after the fire. So the fire for us, it started late Sunday night. Our area is burnt early Monday morning. Friday morning, I found out my wife was pregnant with our second child. So that's our little fire baby, one of the first ones that was born after the fires. And on the far left, that's me, 4 years, 20 pounds, and 3,000 gray hairs ago, traipsing through my property. And on the far right, that's me about 3 weeks ago with that grayish blue house behind me is the house we live in now. So what we were able to do was find a builder who bought a parcel and was going to build a spec home and then sell it to somebody. We entered into a contract basically saying, if you give us design control, will you build what we want? And they said, yeah. And so they built the entire house, and I bought it with a conventional mortgage when it had final occupancy, and I was in 2 days after the house was completed. And my story, and the reason why I'm here, is because professionally, I'm a commercial insurance agent. So I do business insurance. I don't do homeowners. Please don't ask me about homeowners. I know just enough to get you and I in trouble. And I deal with a lot of contractors. I'm a construction risk insurance specialist. So I know insurance when it comes enough. I know construction, and I lost my house. And I was like, I'm going to do something. I gotta do something. And so I was like, I put together a panel discussion, and I had builders and insurance and local leaders and all this stuff. And 200 and some people showed up at the local junior college. I was like, this is great. We got a lot of information. I think everybody's, happy. And I went home, and the next day somebody posted a message on on Pam's Facebook group. Hey, when are we all getting together again? I have questions about this, and this. And I was like, but I was done. Like I did my thing. And then another person's like, yeah, I want to have a question about this. And so I was like, all right, what can I do? And James Gore, who's the supervisor for all of our areas, had learned about this system called the block captain system from Lake County, which unfortunately burns every year up by us. It's a very rural area. And it's called the block captain system because literally they had each block, like a block of 5 houses had somebody that was like their point person. And he was like, I'm going to adapt it to here. And he called me, he's like, hey, is this going to work there? I was like, yeah. So we met at the local concert hall, had about 350 people at that. And there's a picture of it. There's a picture of the meeting right down there at the bottom. But if you could find the picture of me and James, we're literally laying on the stage with markers, like 6-year-olds, just drawing on a map and dividing it up and being like, all right, this is area 1 and this is area 2. And we stood up and said, all right, from this street to this street, that's area 1. If that's you, you go over there. And if you're from this street to this street, that's area 2, and you go over there. And if you want to lead the community, raise your hand. And people did. Pam was one of them, and a bunch of other people did. And then we started meeting regularly. And we started to get a lot of people wanting to help us and give us money. And we were like, well, we can't take money. And so we started a 501c3 so we could take in some money. And so we took in a little bit. And then we got, thanks to Jen and after the fire, we got a $500,000 donation to rebuild these community walls, which I won't get into here. But basically, it was a problem where FEMA didn't take them down because they thought that the city owned them, but the city actually turned them over to the property owners 7 years before, but didn't tell anybody. And so these were cement brick walls. And we priced it out through private debris removal. It was going to cost $27,000 to remove and rebuild them, like kind of quality. So per person, per lot. And it was 42, 21 on each side. So they're like, hey, we want to give you $500,000. We're like, thanks, but no, we don't want it. Please give it to them, and then we'll use it because we don't want, control of that much money. That's scary to us, right? Give it to a professional who will write a check to a professional. And that's what happened. And Coffey Strong became this organization that really banded our community together and helped us rebuild pretty fast. So we lost 1,350 homes in my neighborhood alone. If we go to the website, I think we're 98% complete at this point, coming up on 4.5 years later. And it's all because of everybody standing around me in the lower right-hand corner. All of those people down there, those are the board members and volunteers. And the one thing I have to say, and there's one thing I talked to somebody today about, is you only need a few board members to be like the stalwarts, like the people that are there all the time. But you need a lot of volunteers. And it could be somebody who's like, I have this one simple task that I want to get accomplished. And that could be like, I want to determine about landscaping or, fighting the post office, whatever it is. And you just let them loose, find their passion, find what they're really, really driven by, and let them loose. Empower people, don't micromanage. And there's actually two people in that picture.
Go to the next slide.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know I had two slides.
Oh, no, Wine Wednesday's up there.
Oh, perfect. So this is the block captain system. So basically what it ends up being is, I forgot about this slide. I'm sorry. Basically, there's three main reasons why the block captain system, in my opinion, works. And it's not something that we did intentionally, but it's something that we found, as we did it. Number one is communication, and it's communication in multiple ways. So it's communication with your neighbors, making sure everybody's connected. Who knows where this person is? Did they relocate? My house is being rebuilt. Can we split the fence line instead of having me pay for it with my rebuild money only? Those kind of things. But also it helps with the different municipalities. So the city or the county, and in our case, it even went to the state and federal and the postal service, which you think may be government, but it is wildly not the government.
It is. I mean, it is.
Anyways, I have a different opinion about that. They operate wildly different than most governments. How's that? And so it became this way of us being able to communicate up and down. So for the city, in our case, and sometimes the county and other entities, organizations, if they had an issue, they wanted to get out to us, to the community, right? So the 1,350 homes in my neighborhood, they were like, hey, this ordinance changed. You pass this ordinance, and now this is the new requirements. They knew that they could come to us and we'd be able to get it out to everybody in a timely manner. Conversely, we're the boots on the ground. You're the boots on the ground. You're going to find issues that the city, the county, the state have no idea about until you bring it to their attention. And what the cities and the counties really appreciated was the fact that we had a representative system where if I or Pam or one of the other board members called somebody, they knew that there was authority behind it, that we were legitimate, right? And if you have one person bringing a problem for 50 people, it's way better than bringing 50 people with the exact same problem, because they want to be able to solve that problem, but they also have to spend time responding to everybody. So if they can say, hey, I solved this problem, get it out to everybody, then we can send it out to everyone ourselves, because that's what we're there to do, is to help communicate.
Let's go to the next slide so you can see the progress or an example of what.
Okay. I
help
can't
with
read
this.
that.
Here, I can help with this. Just really quickly, we wanted to show you some things. So the Press Democrat is our major regional media outlet. They ended up winning a Pulitzer Prize for their work in covering the fire. And every month they would do a pullout section on the rebuild progress. This for about 2.5 years. And they would have these graphs. They pulled the data from the county and the city in a way that the city and the county can work together to report, like, where were we in the progress? And then this was another tool for survivors to use, for people like me who ran nonprofits, for the government and the media to use to really measure the progress. And so this is a snapshot out. We're going to go into Q&A in just a moment. This is about 18 months post-disaster. So it's May of 2019. And we just wanted to show you what a great tool this was. It was also dynamic, so you could pull just bits of information and data from it. And then to really point out this quote from Supervisor James Gore, who really was an unusual elected, that he leaned all the way in. And if he didn't know, he was comfortable saying, I don't know. Very important. And he said, replace resilience with the word better. Just say better. Better every day. And the only way to achieve better every day is through imperfect, relentless progress. And that's really going to allow you to have some grace for yourself, for your neighbors, for your public officials. You do have to work together. You do have to call them in. You know, you do have to hold them accountable, but progress is an imperfect exercise. Two other really quick things I want to say before we go to Q&A is go make sure that you talk to your lender, knowYourOptions.com. We have those in the folders. You do not have to pay your mortgage for a year, very likely, but you do need to check that, and there'll be no fees. It's a forbearance. You can add it on to the end. That gives you a minute. The other thing is that for insurance, for your personal insurance needs, United Policyholders is here, and they are very trustworthy, very effective. And I know that Valerie Brown will be here on Friday again. So they're a wonderful resource. Take full advantage of them. We don't touch insurance. We totally leave it for them. You can request this disaster recovery handbook and household inventory guide. I've heard from people in Paradise and from our fires too, like this was a lifesaver for them. And you can order from their website. It's uphelp.org, and it is free. So let's go ahead and go to question and answer. We're just Q&A now. That's fine. We can go to stop sharing.
Yep.
So I have two questions. First is, and you touched on it briefly.
I think we should mic you. Yeah. Can I do this? Or yes. Okay, Donahue. There you go, Donahue.
And we also should address.
Thanks. Thanks for traveling here and being here for our community. First question, you touched on this briefly, but what we're hearing kind of anecdotally is that there's going to be a tremendous underinsurance problem here where people are just not going to have sufficient coverage to rebuild based on what the market rates are just commanding. Do you have any specific advice in terms of, bridging the gap between what it's going to cost to rebuild versus what you're covered at? Were you able to, leverage the nonprofits in fundraising to do direct grants to people who had deficiencies? So I guess that's my first question, then I'll follow up with a second question.
I do want to acknowledge that we do have writing questions, and this was one of them, and it's really important. And one of the things I will say is that grants were handled differently according to the county and the community foundation. Napa Community Foundation did give individual grants to rebuilders to close that gap, as did Mendocino Community Foundation. So it really depends on your local community foundation, but I'm going to hand this over to Brad and Jeff.
For us, what we found is you're definitely going to utilize both your dwelling and content money. So when you look at your policy, first and foremost, fight for every penny out of your insurance policy. This is Brad Sherwood, volunteer speak. Get every penny. Do not settle with your insurance company until you get every penny. It might take a while, but it's worth the fight. Second of all, it's all about the builder that you go with. That's why we did the group rebuild. That was the only way we were able to rebuild, because we were underinsured, was through the group rebuild. There are various different ways you can do group rebuilds. You can do them totally cookie cutter, simple, or you can get into more custom style group builds. It costs you a little more, but it's up to the group you want to rebuild with. SBA loans. I know of 2 people that successfully got an SBA loan. I know of thousands that applied. Thousands of hours spent on SBA loan applications. I know 2 people that got them. One person got it only because our congressman literally walked him through the process and personally handled the case. I may give it back to Jeff because he might have more to know about grants and that kind of nature, but I'm afraid there are not a lot of other financial resources that I'm aware of. And it's all about the builder and how you build. Nothing to add. Jeff has nothing to add, which I'll say is very rare.
I don't mind adding something. Oh, Pam, okay, here. There you go.
I had a conversation with some of you folks yesterday about, there's already been some fundraisers and there's a big concert coming up. Wonderful. There's going to be other fundraisers. And what happened with us, there were some big fundraisers too. And then it was our local credit union that was really managing those funds, but they were not a grant making organization. They're a bank, credit union. So they transferred those funds to local community organizations to use them for the purpose of rebuilding and recovery and social things that were needed. And yes, I think all three of us received checks from those. However, most of that money was not granted to organizations whose mission it was to deliver money to individual households to rebuild their houses. So if you are involved on the board of or helping with figuring out where that money raised goes, you may want to be very loud about saying it needs to go to some organization whose mission includes making grants for that missing fund part, if you think that's how it should work. Because I think up in Paradise, their foundation has missing middle grants. That did not exist in ours. How did I rebuild my house? I was underinsured too. I took out a second mortgage where I had two income household. I took on a lot more debt. We're not rich people, but I had to figure out my finances. I did not want to sign a contract with a builder until I knew I was making a responsible financial choice that I would be able to fulfill. Do not sign a contract with a builder until you have really figured some things out for yourself, and also make sure that contract is reviewed by a lawyer who can understand if your interests are protected in that contract. Those are really important things. I was able to qualify for a second mortgage. We handled it, and they handled all the disbursement of funds. So that credit union set up an escrow account. My insurance money went in there, and as soon as that was depleted, and I paid my first payments all out of my contents funds, as soon as it depleted, it kicked over to the second mortgage, and that's how they paid the rest.
Again, really important not to just pay your mortgage off as you go, because you want to leverage that into a construction loan. What was the second part of your question?
I have the second question is unrelated to that. So, I mean, I know you have a list of questions. I don't want to monopolize the time, but.
Why don't you just go ahead?
Yeah, so.
You're right there.
So, your fires obviously affected a larger number of homes and kind of greater square mileage, area, land mass. One of the unique, and I know that you guys toured Louisville and Superior and Boulder County to see the disaster, sites. One of the, I think, unique things about our fire, because it went so quickly, it has, obviously ravaged certain communities and then spared others just across the street. And where, some members of our community are able to get back to life, get back to normal relatively easily, and others obviously cannot. And so one of the things that I'm focused on is, how do we ensure that our community stays focused on, rebuilding for all of us, and stays, energized on helping when we have, people who are able to kind of transition back into normalcy a lot easier than others.
This is such a good question, and I have an expert here to my right who I've seen on national television several times. There's lots of photos of both of them, but especially this one, like staring off into the distance thoughtfully on national media, because the media is going to be a big part of that story, and you have to remind them that they're part of your recovery. They are the storytellers. And so I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Okrepke. Bradley Sherwood is also very good with media, but
Not as good as Jeff.
not as good as this guy.
So to answer your question, some of the people picture of the board members were what we called standing homes. And they were right there on the line and their houses were spared. They did smoke damage and ash and all that kind of stuff. But they're the ones who were there through the entirety of the rebuild process, right? So when I say, you know, someone who lost their house, there's nobody that can sympathize with them the way that somebody else who lost their house can. I can't sympathize or empathize with somebody who didn't lose their house but is right there on the line, because I don't. When I lost my house, I moved to another city initially for another month and a half, for the first month and a half, right? They never did. And they stayed there and they saw everything and they saw it every day, no matter what, you know. They wake up, open their blinds, devastation. And those individuals are just as important because they have a unique experience. They have a unique ability to be there and see things that are going on. I was talking to Neil earlier about the debris removal process and how, you know, there's certain roads that our city and county said you can't travel down because it wasn't safe to have these, you know, giant trucks drive down them. And they would literally narc them out, which good, because it's unsafe, right? But they'd be like, hey, these guys are driving down there. You told them not to drive down there. And they're important. And it's important to understand they have their own experience. We have our own experience, but both are just as important because there's 180,000 people in our city. And we didn't lose our entire city. We lost a portion of it, but everybody else was around there. And it was not just an impact to us in terms of losing houses, but economically, workforce. Our neighborhood, Pamela and I's neighborhood, was 40% renters. Statistically speaking, 23% of renters have renter's insurance. That means 77% have nothing, and they can easily move. So if they get a $5,000 payout from some, you know, generous donor, they can just move to Seattle and start over because they have nothing tying them here. And so it's a matter of trying to communicate with everybody and keeping everybody in the loop, because everybody's viewpoint and everybody's experience is important to the entirety of the rebuild. Do you want me to talk about my relationships with the reporters? Okay. So I am generally shameless when it comes to reporters in this situation because there's a lot of outpouring of support in the first few weeks after the fire. And everybody is just like, they want to help. They want to donate clothes. They want to donate money. And then kind of like I did when I had my panel discussion, like I did my good deed and now I'm going to move on. Well, the recovery's not over. And so when you leverage relationships, you are able to, especially with media, you know, because I don't know if you guys know how like TV and print media works. They're constantly trying to find stories. And so if you have a relationship where you're like, hey, did you know that like this certain thing happened in our neighborhood? And they're like, no, can we write a script? Like, yes, you can. Please show up. I know people that will talk to you. Always say yes. Oh, if you can't do it yourself, find somebody that'll do it. And just keep it front of mind. And, you know, it helps you to keep your situation present for the entirety of the community, as well as, I said this last night, you know, there may be people that want to donate clothes right now or money right now, but in the case of our wall, there was somebody who was like, hey, I can leverage this scenario. So like our wall, I say we got $500,000 for these 2 walls. That's not what it cost. But we were able to leverage relationships with excavation companies and builders and these kinds of things, one individual company, to do that because it was a process months down the line that they could actually do something, right? They could have written a check before, but they can actually like make legitimate change to a community using their resources. And that was because we stayed in the press. Yeah, always say yes. Keep them in your phone. You know, if someone's like, hey, can I call it? Yes, here's my phone number. What's yours? Oh yeah, I'll text. And just keep it going because you never know what they're going to want to cover and what they're going to want to do.
I kind of want to just bounce back real quick to the question about those who lost homes, those who didn't. And one thing that we haven't addressed yet are our kids and our youth. And I think the school districts play a huge role in your community's rebuilding and most importantly, recovering. For those kids who did not lose a home, whose friends lost a home, they're in school together, they're in class together. It's just a very stressful environment for those kids. And so I just want to make sure that it's official on the record and that if school officials are listening or if they're not, you need to work with your school boards and your superintendents and ensure that counseling is a priority, and each and every school site impacted with students who lost and or impacted or not. It doesn't matter if you lost your home. Your community just went through a disaster. You're all recovering together. So are the kids, if not more. You won't even know the impact to youth crisis maybe for a year out. So I just wanted to make sure that is said, make sure that is a priority for your community leaders. Make sure you get the counseling and the right help for your kids.
That answer your question? Yeah.
Great. Hey, Jen, why don't you do one of the questions off there, then we'll
Okay.
do one from in here.
It's actually a really good question, sort of feeds into this. Couple of things that one of the things we want to acknowledge is that you're experiencing compound disasters right now. You have COVID, you have a mega fire. We've had 3 mega fires since our fires, by the way. We have, and you have the age of disinformation and upset. So you are really grappling with a lot. And we just want to acknowledge that that is very difficult. One of the questions that came through on the chat is, what are the long-term health effects of these wildfires? Because you are inhaling essentially people's lives. And we weren't prepared at all that we would need masks. Did not really occur. I mean, you couldn't actually breathe, so that was helpful in the message. But we don't yet know. UC Davis is doing studies. There are lots of studies out there about what's going to happen to people who are inhaling these chemicals. But, you know, the long-term health effects, we've only been in the age of mega fires for about 5 years. And so we don't know. So that's one thing to acknowledge. And I also want to say, to piggyback on what Brad is talking about, is the mental health care that you need to provide for your community. My home did not burn, but I felt unentitled to any sort of sympathy. I did not see myself as a survivor for a long time, though I was fully traumatized and for 10 days out of my home, sleeping in my car with my dogs, you know, serving the community 20 hours a day. But I thought, oh no, I didn't have it the worst. And then even fire survivors who lost their homes, they'd be like, but we didn't die. Everyone is traumatized. You are a community in trauma. It is okay to acknowledge that and to attend to that. And I agree with Brad, that we all do to first start with the children, but also don't forget about yourselves. And as leaders in the community, we have seen a lot of community leaders not make it past 18 months because they worked too hard. This is a long recovery. You have to take care of yourselves. And I am going to eventually even listen to that for myself. Full acknowledgement, but the long-term health effects we don't know. And quickly, there was another question about how the fire started here, perhaps a coal mine burning underground. We don't have those answers. We can tell you that we have experienced mega fires since then, but as to the specific cause of your fire and could it happen again, we just don't have those answers. So, thank you.
Question.
Can I
Go
do
ahead.
a little bit more about those of you who are, thank you so much for stepping forward and saying, I want to help. I want to help lead. I want to be here. It took me a while. I felt like I was in this vigilance mode, you know, like your fight, flight, vigilance, work for about a year. And then I went through a kind of personal reflective process to think about what really is my purpose in this recovery. And I felt completely like I was doing the right thing when I did that, but I needed to step back a minute and reflect and also feel what was going on in my own mind and my own body physically, like how was I holding the stress? Because it can be actually a physical impact on your body and your heart rate and your blood pressure. So be aware of how you're holding that anxiety, stress, and also adrenaline to do the work. And then decide, like, you know what, I'm going to do this part and I'm going to find somebody else who's really actually better at this than me, and they're going to do that part. And that's actually it was a really powerful thing for me to say, you know what, I'm going to say no to this one. I'm going to say yes to that one. And in the end, it was better because we had more people contributing. So I just wanted to give you that heads up at the beginning.
Jeff, you mentioned block captains versus board members. I'm guessing board members is part of the 501c3. Is that just block captains would be the same thing if we didn't establish a 501c3? And then Brad, you talked about the 501c3 and that you guys raised almost $1 million. Did you have some people that were doing some grant writing? Did you have a specific people assigned to raise funds? Or did you just say to the entire community, do your best to try to raise some funds for the 501c3?
So for us, block captains were volunteers. I mean, we were all block captains to a certain extent.
We were all volunteers.
We're, I mean, we're not responsible as a board member.
People
That's,
didn't always know that.
yeah.
They thought
People,
we had a staff.
yeah. So people, when I was like, oh, I found this workshop, they're like, oh yeah, you know, how much did you get paid? I was like, nothing. Like, I wish I got paid. That'd be awesome. But there were the board members. One of the reasons why we did a 501c3 was to raise money, but also it gave us a formal process, right? So we had meetings that had to have minutes. We had to have a president. We had to have a secretary. We had to have a treasurer. It gave a formation for us to follow along because we had to abide by that legally. But the block captains were just non-board members who were volunteering to either represent a certain area or a certain interest. So like I said, we had standing home individuals. They were block captains, but they weren't board members. Right. So they would just show up and be like, hey, here's what's going on with the standing homes and here's what's going on with this. They had their own standing home meetings because, I mean, I can't sit there in a standing home meeting and say, and like I said before, like have a conversation about like what they're going through and what I'm going through because it's not going to match. But somebody who can't identify with that can. But it's important for the greater organization to have an idea of what's going on with them so that if there's anything we need to identify and address, we can.
And you invited people in every month.
Yes, and we invited speakers in every month. So somebody, you know, hey, how do, you know, Comcast and AT&T, you want to do high-speed fiber, come on in and talk to us about it. Or we invited people to help, especially with the bilingual community. How do we get in touch with them? The faith communities, you know, stuff along those lines. And it was just kind of like giving us a larger view of how to help the community because we need that. And I'll steal a little bit from the fundraising aspect. For us, it was kind of having fingers in all parts of the community, right? So the more people you have involved, not necessarily voting on things, being a board member, but just saying like, oh yeah, we had a community park in the middle of our neighborhood. So Coffey Park is an actual park, and then the community around it is also Coffey Park. That burned, and we were given an estimate of about $11 million to rebuild all of it because it had to be completely graded and everything like that. Broken glass and fire debris were in it and all that good stuff. And so the city didn't have the funding. And so we had to have funding. And so it was like, all right, who do you know? You know, can we contact, you know, people that are the open space district or whatever. And someone was like, hey, we can apply to Kaiser Thrive. They have this. And so we reimagined our park to be more friendly so we had like workout stations and more outdoor activities. And so we got a grant from them. And it's just, that's one of the benefits of having so many people involved. It's because the more people you have involved, the more people that are ancillarily connected to your cause and you can tap into for specific things. So we met every week in the initial aftermath. And that was just because things were changing so quickly. And for the president, so for me, the founder, initially, it was a lot of work because we were starting from nothing. We didn't know what we were doing. So we had to get up and running and try to figure out what we were going to do. One of the things that we also did was there was a weekly breakfast with people from Larkfield and Mark West and other areas to discuss things. You know, once you get it down, it's a lot easier. But there's being the president is a lot more demand than everything else because you're where the buck stops, right? And people are going to look to you. But for like your average board member, a week, maybe, I don't know, Pam would be better at you know, a few hours maybe, to, you know, with meetings. Well, I just want to answer his question. So just maybe a few hours or.
What you don't want to do, I heard this from you. You don't want to say, will you volunteer 10 hours a week for the next 5 years? No, you don't want to say that. You say, we need somebody to help us maintain our social media. Will you volunteer to do that? And just see how it goes. And then they may decide to keep helping you or not. You know, I honestly, I quit my job. I took a different job that was more flexible. I spent a freaking load, so much time. I spent so much time, but because I told you already, I felt like that's where I needed to be and what I needed to do. And that's going to be a personal decision. It's not a job application and also we didn't like vet like, oh, what are your credentials to help here? We had all kinds of people and you'll be surprised how very talented and skilled and what kind of cool things can be leveraged because you have this interesting group of people that, I mean, we just met with somebody who's a physicist, and who knows how that might be helping you. But, you know, one of your rebuilders is a physicist, and that might be really cool.
Hello.
Did you get your fundraising question? I think that it's important to say that you will determine, probably Jeff spent like half of his time on this, you know, so it really depends on what role you play and what you choose and what you give what you can. Don't give everything. And that's really key. Really key.
Did you find that there were grants out there for that you could write and take grants? And
Yes.
do you have that information that we could write to those same grants?
Repeat the question.
So the question is, grant availability, types of grants made available to nonprofits for fire rebuilds. The answer is yes, and a lot of that can be received from After the Fire and Jennifer. There are resources where there are grants availability on websites listed for you. So yes, there are resources that will hook you up.
Can I address, actually, I didn't, now, I'm sorry, now I understand your question better. One of the things we did in the second year was we set up what was called a Rise Up Community Impact Grants Program with a partnership with the United Way of Wine Country. We put 400,000 into that. And then we did smaller grants between really like 1,000, sometimes as much as 50,000, but for the most part, the average grant amount was 7,000. And we made the process really simple. I can hand you that whole thing. It's all auto-populates onto Salesforce. And then as far as our grants are concerned, one of the things that happened with us is that we were given $2 million right off the bat from PG&E. I'm just going to be very straightforward. I'm sure that it was Gilt's money. And it was the utility, because they were responsible for burning it down. They were found responsible.
Oh, I have to be politically correct.
Yeah, no, not really. It's okay. They were found to be responsible. They suspected as much. So that, and what they felt very badly, and they were approached by the guy who started the first version of us, saying, hey, I want to do this to help the community. What it allowed us to do was to chase the mission instead of the funding. And that's a really important thing. Like, if you keep your community central and you chase your mission, the funding will follow. But if you try to make your mission match the funding, you're going to end up in a way out there with somebody else's rebuild. Don't do that. I'm happy to share anything open source that we have. Right now, how we're sitting here is that we're very frugal, but we have an Alaska Airlines partnership. So they $25,000 a year. They love our work. They believe in it. And next week we'll announce a Walmart Foundation grant for $250,000 to do this work. Now, is that the same for you? It's not necessarily going to be the same, but you do have a community foundation here that took in, I think, $27 million. So asking them if maybe they'll set aside $1 million for smaller community grants is one idea. We're happy to share any kind of best practices with any of them. And then you leverage that. Really what everyone is saying is all perfect, because you leverage the smaller amounts in service to the larger amounts. Ask for funding for a grant writer. You can teach yourself to write a grant, but you can also torture yourself in other ways too, like learning to change your oil. Somebody else can do it for a very small amount of time who's an expert.
Retired grant writer help us.
Yeah.
Just real quick, the Kaiser grant that I was talking about is a national grant. It's a regional, each region for Kaiser has this grant. But in terms of the 501c3 versus just the open block captain system, when you're the 501c3, the thing that we found is it legitimized us, right? We're this legitimate organization. We're not just a community group that needs help. You know, we're an organization that has come together by survivors to help us rebuild. And it really does help legitimize you and give strength behind your message. So I just want to make sure that's a key difference between just having it be an open block captain system versus incorporating.
And I will just emphasize that Superior Rising is a 501c3. Louisville Rising is also another 501c3. There's several others in the area who are focused specifically on this space. So I think that we've started to get some of that structure spun up, but we need to really build into this kind of neighborhood captain, block captain sort of a concept. So I think that's going to be a key piece for all of us to focus on.
Marshall together, I think, is what you were looking for.
To note too, like that's one way to do it. When we presented this to Paradise at a convening that we held a couple, like 3 years ago, about 6 months after their fires, They took it and adapted it to how it worked for them into a zone captain system. So it's really important to note that while we have systems and ideas, they should be adapted to what works for your community. And we're happy to help walk you through that process. But ultimately, this has to be led and designed by you. It's going to be your children on these soccer fields in 10 years. And don't let anybody come in and be a hero or a savior or tell you exactly how you should be doing it. You know your community. We're here to give you ideas and support. And I really believe in that. Go ahead.
The whole block captain process and the gathering information doesn't just have to be about, developing leadership, but on builders as well. So when you go to a building expo and you find folks who are interested in working with the builder, connect with each other, start developing builder block programs and share information and share. It doesn't have to be group plans, but again, connecting with builders and groups and sharing information about what that builder is saying is very important. Jeff and I, again, lived in very different communities, and we did have some builders who worked in both, but they were very different dynamics, different price points, different offerings, which can cause confusion. And because you're getting a lot of people talk, they're going to want to know, who are you going with? What are they charging? What are their plans? So having those kind of like Slack channels or having those kind of block captain discussions on builders is going to be crucial, especially now between the 1 month to 3 month timeline you're facing.
So there are a lot of insurance questions in the chat. And for those of you asking that, I'm once again going to refer you to United policyholders. They are in your community, and and you have a representative coming back here on Friday, Valerie Brown, uphelp.org. So we are not insurance experts, and we want to be careful with that. A really important question though that came through is, how do you not lose hope? And I would actually like each of the people up here to quickly answer that in under a minute, because it's really, and it's a critical question. Pam?
One thing Coffey Park became known for was we like to throw giant parties and get everybody together to do something really celebratory together. It all started with one of the guys who was with one of the builders. A couple people started hanging battery powered lights up on the burned trees because, our fire was in October, and then before we knew it was Christmas, there was still debris all over. Some of the removal had started, but whoa, did you see? There's like Christmas lights hanging. And then people started to get Christmas trees and put them on their lot among all the debris. And we were hanging stockings from our burned cars. And then we started having parties, and then we started the Wine Wednesdays, and we still do it. And people we actually just dissolved as a official 501c3. Like, who's going to organize the parties? Like, we can still have parties, but that social connectedness and sharing joys together, also commiserating, but having joy, that's what you need to get up each morning and to know that you can do those things.
For me, I don't know if you see, me and Brad are kind of like giggling with each other up here. You guys aren't at the stage yet, but you will need to find humor in everything. And there's a lot of dark humor and black humor. But it's one of those things where you just kind of have to ride the wild ride and accept things as they come. And it's not easy. Don't get me wrong. It's not easy to do. But when you're going along this process, you and your little cohort of survivors, you can make these jokes with each other and loosen up around each other that, maybe not be relevant to, other people's lives. So that's a big thing for me. I had young kids, in the sense of community. One of the things we did is, I didn't know Pam before the fire at all. The way I met Pam is I was trying to organize my second event and trying to collect contact information by literally saying, post it here or message me, and then typing it manually into an Excel spreadsheet. She's like, why don't you just use a Google form? And I was like, because I don't know what that is. And she was like, here's how you do it. And that's how we met. And it's those kinds of connections that do it. So for me with little kids, we had a trunk or treat. So for Halloween, everybody came in their cars and parked outside their houses, and the kids trick or treated from house to house, getting it out of their trunks. And then once more houses started to get rebuilt, I would take my kids and go back to the neighborhood And you start seeing these neighbors, you'll meet neighbors you never met before, and you become close to them. And it's just, keeping that camaraderie is really important. Brad was going off on that earlier about like, make sure you meet. Pam mentioned Wine Wednesdays. That is spelled WHINE. Get together and commiserate with each other. No, like I said, no one knows what you're going through other than people that went through it as well, right? And so just sit there and complain about a builder, complain about the city. Sorry, Neil. Complain about whatever else. And just, get it out. The absolute worst thing you can do in this entire process is keep things into yourself. It will eat away at you, and it will be so vicious the way you feel inside. Let it out. And the people around you, the people that are going through this with you, they will understand it, and you will not be judged. I cannot stress that enough.
Just quickly, hope for me, just like Jeff or my kids, I wanted them to have a better house to live in, a better community to live in, and I want them to see strength and resiliency. So every day to school, their school, their elementary school literally survived the fire. Everything else around it burned. The school closed for 3 months to clean up and then reopened. So every day I took them to school, we drove through our burned down neighborhood, which sucked. But the silver lining was they saw the rebirth and the regrowth of our community. And that was so exciting. So to see sticks up was amazing. The other thing, come to California. Come see what a rebuilt community looks like. That's what we did. We took a convoy of fire survivors, drove down to San Diego to where multiple fires had hit communities in past years. And you saw firsthand what a rebuilt community will look like in 5 years, in 15 years. That makes a huge difference as well. So hope is what you make of it and what you give it.
Really quickly, I will say this, I'm not going to take long, but for me, I didn't lose my house, but what keeps me in this work for so long and keeps me showing up to every wildfire over the past 4 years is the people. It's the people who are sitting in this room, it's the humanity. And so all this destruction and all of this loss, but for me, I have found the best of humanity in the center of it. And if you just keep feeding that part of it, you will sustain yourself better. Go ahead. What was the next question?
I had a question. Everybody talks about build costs. It costs $300, $400, $500. As a builder to build a house, I understand, you can have those costs. But what's a big unknown are your land developments. That's going to change. When I say land development, I had a question about contaminated soil. They're talking about, all this ash, that's all contaminated. Well, we start pulling that ash out. Okay, we got to come back with something else. Where does that cost factor in? How deep do you go down? How can a builder give somebody those numbers without knowing that information? And what other things have y'all come across that aren't part of just throwing the foundation and going all the way up? Because my concern is this: if you have 5 people building around each other, and I take the contaminated soil out of there, and I put more brand new soil, compact it, do all that stuff, but the lots around it have not been taken out. So all the water, all the runoff, stuff like that can contaminate your soil again. So what did y'all do? Did y'all have any of these issues? Did y'all work together to do that? And if so, how did y'all do that?
That is a multi-pronged question. I'm going to start because I worked for the county when we were starting our debris removal, which is a big unknown for us. Now all these subcontractors are actually very good at debris removal. They've done it a lot of times. To be clear, they've not done a mega fire with basements, and that's a whole different thing for you all. And I just have to say it over and over again. But the county decides, and the health department decides, county environmental health will decide what level is acceptable. And they don't always know, but there's more industry standard now. And then they give that to the debris removal company. The debris removal company, they're pre-positioned for 7 years through federal contracts. So that's all decided. It doesn't matter who runs it. It's all been decided. Sometimes counties, like in Jackson County, Southern Oregon, the county made a decision to separate out the soils testing from the debris removal. And that actually in some ways may have been a good decision. It's hard to say. It just slowed the process down a little bit. And I saw different executions is that's the way I can say it. We had overscrape in our county, in Mendocino County. It had to be mitigated, and it had to do with what were the soils, what was the determination of the acceptable soil contaminant list. But as a builder, you're not responsible for that. As far as like the soil contaminants, two things: we are not recommending that you go and party in your neighborhood until you know that it is safe. It is a real thing that do wear a mask, do take every precautions, do wear gloves. You don't know what the long-term health effects are, but what you're talking about with the debris removal, all that stuff, that's going to be handled by the county and the landowner and not by the builder. However, we do see a lot of issues with rain coming in and wattles. Please do reach out to us so we can connect you with other experts in that area, because the answer is it depends and it's different. Oh, you know what a wattle is? Everybody, it's that hay ball. Hay, it's a hay tube. It's hay tube. It's that. And mitigations are different according to what's in your area. But is that a real concern? Absolutely. And like, we work in Santa Cruz too, so you can imagine what their concerns were like, and very reasonable, very mountainous. So yeah.
Yeah, so our county required the wattles. So every property had to have wattle around it because it was getting into rain season, or what was supposed to be rain season, thanks drought. And so they wanted to make sure that like that stuff didn't happen. But one of the concerns that you raised is another concern that we had, and we did see is, we had a lot of homes that were on piers, and then some built back with piers and some built back with a PT slab. And now you have homes that are offset like this. And that's one thing that the cities and the counties need to be aware of, is make sure that, it's flat and have some sort of regulation in place to make sure that that's not, because that house is up here, that runoff's going to go next door, not forward into the gutter where it's supposed to go. So, but yeah, those are some of the things that we did. In terms of cost per square foot, like the one thing I will say is cost per square foot is a very subjective thing. If you ask somebody what's the cost of square foot to rebuild, it's very hard for them to say unless they know exactly what you had, right? Did you have redwood hardwood floors? Did you have cherry cabinets? Did you have this? Because all of those little differences can change that cost per square foot. And that it's really difficult for builders to do that unless they know exactly what you have. And trust me, I know the insurance company is like, what's your cost per square foot? What's your cost per square foot? And you can tell them they're not going to believe you anyways. But it's really difficult to get into that until you know exactly what kind of finishes and all those things you want.
And Boulder County has designated the cleanups criteria, like the kind of specific requirements, and it's going to be applicable both for the county cleanup and private contractors. And there's folks here in the room who are doing that on the private side, as well as folks plan on doing it on the public side. So let's tie that out and get that figured out.
As far as removing, they put back as well as capacity, or is they just?
Yeah, it's a remove 3 to 6 and test, or remove 12 and you're good. Exactly.
Also, a big warning, we've heard from a lot of different communities. We've been in many fire communities, and some people decide they're like, I'm not removing my foundation. I'm going to try to go for it. You have to disclose that later when you try to sell. Make fires don't burn like house fires are way hotter. And a lot of people find themselves with a mountain of hazardous waste that they personally are responsible to financially handle removal. And it's not like taking it to the dump because it's hazardous waste. So make sure that you make a very educated decision. Pam wanted to note that we are going to put a lot of resources and PDFs on our website, and we'll send you out the link for that too. Did you want to add to that?
I was just gonna say, for those of you who registered either for being present here or for our Zoom, I just want to remind you that we're going to send you a link to the recording, but also we have handouts about the block captain system. We have a new handout that we just developed on questions to ask when you're comparing and vetting different builders. Other resources like that, we'll be sharing those in an email directly to you as long as you have registered. And if you didn't register, we'll just go on our website and do it now, and then you'll be on the email list.
Yeah, or email us. We're fine. Go ahead.
Any other questions?
We want to thank you then. I mean, if you have other questions, come up and ask. Like, allowing us in your community is a position of trust. We know exactly what it's like to be a wildfire community and to feel overwhelmed by the amount of people who rush in to help and then never show up again. I am happy to bring these same people back if they're willing to volunteer their time again. To meet with you in 5 to 7 months, any month but June. We do come back for up to 3 years, and or as long as you want, you can kick us out. It's fine, whatever works for you. But we don't just come in and then leave. We stay with you. And again, and on your own time, look at our YouTube channel, our How to Disaster podcast. But we know this is a very long slog, and we want you to know that you're not alone. You're not alone. And welcome to this, excuse my language, very shitty club full of really wonderful people.
I just want to say one thing too is, so it's Brad Sherwood, and I am on Facebook. And if you want to friend me, I invite that. And you can see I chronicled my rebuild story pretty well on my Facebook page. So I offer that. You'll see the pictures we took when our lot got cleared for debris, when we got the green light from the county public health to actually start building. So you can kind of see the timeline that it took for us from fire to moving in. So I offer that up.
Yeah, I will as well. My last name's Okrepke. If you can figure out how to spell it, there's 40 of us in the entirety of the United States, and they're all my relatives. So I'm really easy to find on social media and stuff like that. You know, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, find me. I'm more than happy to share my experience. I mean, there's people in here that were like, hey, can I have a call with you? And I was like, sure. And I spent an hour on the phone with multiple individuals because, you know, this is something I just really care about. I have all of this information, you know, Brad and I and Pam and as survivors have all of this information, and the only time we can use it is when there's an unfortunate situation like this. But it's so important to us to share that. We're more than happy, I'm sure, to share the mistakes that we made in organizing and in a rebuild, because we learned them the hard way, and maybe we won't put them on here, but afterwards I'm more than happy to talk to you guys about anything we did that was good or bad. You know, contact us whenever you want.
Are you going to take the questions and answer them on a fact sheet or something if we didn't get to them all?
Oh, yes, Bradley, we will do that. If we did not get to your question, please do email them or go ahead and we will absolutely put them on a fact sheet. Somebody asked for like top 20 earlier today. We were like, yeah, we can do that. Remember that we listen and then we respond. So anything we didn't get to, please let us know.
If I could just acknowledge for a moment, Jen and Raina, who helped put this together. And Jen and Raina from Superior Rising and Marshall together, when we were planning this event, we knew that those of us up here on this, the stage, whatever it is, we're not the right people to answer some of those questions that got asked. And we said, we're gonna let Marshall Together and Superior Rising answer those questions because that's the appropriate way to handle that. So we will answer questions that make sense for us to answer, and Jen and Raina and their teams will answer those local questions.
Thank you again.
So guess what? I'm not Jen, I'm John. But that's good because Jen gave me the microphone. Just wanted to say real quick, thank you to everybody. And it's been awesome to see all of you out here, all of you who were joined via Zoom. I mean, the first time that we had a chance to interact with the folks from after the fire, I think we all had that natural response of who are these folks? Why are they coming out to us? And it has been universal. Everyone I've spoken to who have had a chance to interact with them have just had such a wonderful experience. And so thank you all of you for everything you get and all of your offers for continuing support throughout this. This is great. And Raina, why don't you give a little summary of what's going on with the Slack?
Yes. Sorry, there's some echoing. My name is Raina Pomeroy. I'm representing the Marshall Together group. Sorry about that. Okay, lean backwards. So we represent UBC, Louisville, and Superior members who are, fire survivors. And just so everyone knows, we have over 1,100 members in our Slack. We want to share communication out, but we want to listen and also take it back to folks who are making decisions that we're not in, often we're not in the room when those decisions are being made. And so we want to, take those collective voices and try to share it out as much as possible. I think some of you described that, lack of information up top and in the community level. So we're really trying to do that as much as possible and to gather folks and your voices. So yeah, thank you.
So I think we'll cut everybody loose. I'm going to emphasize two last things. Again, the right of entry form due on Friday. So dig into that. I'm just a neighbor helping neighbors. I'm no expert. But when I read it, I don't know why I wouldn't. I mean, it seems like it's something to really look at. And please reach out to anybody in these organizations if you have questions about that. The other one is, as far as I can tell, as of 5 o'clock on Friday, COVID stops existing in Boulder County, and we're stopping wearing masks. And if you listen to the stories from after the fire crew, so much of this is about getting together and getting together physically, face to face. And I hope we're not causing outbreaks here, but we've all got to get back together and have fun and smile and find those little opportunities to have some good news. And so let's look for that and let's rebuild together.
Can I say one more thing? If you're still here at the very end, thank you. I think if you're looking to be a captain of any sort, raise your hands. We need you. We are, as somebody said, we're working hard on behalf of our community and we want to work with you. So thanks for being here.
Good night, everybody.